Hello and welcome to So You Want to Get Into Politics, Adventures of a Would-Be Councillor. This is a fly on the wall podcast following the journey of my friend Craig as he enters the world of party politics for the first time. I'm Rachel and I'm a local resident of Beaminster and a town councillor.
And I'm Craig, and I hope that you, the listener, will learn how I can represent you and what I'm about. Rachel, how are we going to do it?
Well, we're going to do a weekly Q&A, hopefully picking up questions from our listeners.
If anybody got any comments back from me at sort of 3 o'clock in the morning, I apologise. We can talk about local issues. If you drive or ride this vehicle in the same manner again in the next 12 months, your vehicle will be seized.
We're going to talk about the week's activities and what you've been up to. Possibly, what's the point in doing the 20 miles an hour because nobody would listen to it anyway.
But I think it's quite important that I just put a warning out that sometimes we will go off topic, we are prone at laughing at each other and generally having a bit of a good time.
We are. So this podcast will be available each week from wherever you get your podcasts. So don't forget to subscribe, like and share to get up-to-date episodes. Hi Craig, how you doing?
Good evening, Rachel. I'm doing very good, thank you.
Good. You're looking all relaxed and look like you've been sleeping for 36 hours.
It feels like I have been, yeah.
What have you been up to this last week then? Tell the listener.
Well, I've actually been running my campaign remotely this week because I've actually popped to New York on holiday for the first week.
Very nice.
Yeah, well, it's I had lots of air miles to use and a couple vouchers from BA, so I cashed in every single chip possible to have a budget holiday to New York, if there's such a thing, for my two boys' joint birthday present because they're massive DC Marvel comic booky type fans. So we've done it all and responding to people's comments and questions on Facebook, which is why
I mean,
if anybody got any comments back from me at sort of 3 o'clock in the morning, I apologise. It was the time difference.
yeah, well, you weren't out after having a few beers.
No, it wasn't because of that. It's because I was in New York and I was in New York when the earthquake was happening.
And you survived.
And I survived. I even literally about an hour after that happened, loads of shops were kicking out T-shirts for $10 saying, I visited New York and survived the earthquake. So there you go. We didn't even know it was happening. All our phones were going off with alerts and, a bit like, remember we had that test over here when the government.
Yeah.
So that was actually happening for real, like loads over there. And all the staff in the hotel were saying that they felt the floor rumble and stuff. But yeah, we had no idea. So there you go. And
you mentioned BA at the beginning. Do you think there's any chance now that we might get a sponsorship from British Airways because of our reach?
Well, I think it's a possibility. We're creeping up.
Why not?
Yeah.
There are people banging on the door to sponsor us. And,
we can get a discount
is a shout
code.
Out. Yeah.
Well, I think
the discount code would be ridiculously long, wouldn't it? Considering.
I was just about to say that the discount code would be ridiculously long. If anything, if my email address and website is anything to go by, it won't be workable.
Maybe the discount code should be the words ridiculously long.
Yeah. So if anyone from BA is listening, statistically, probably unlikely.
Yeah. Well, you never know.
You never know, but we'd love to be sponsored by BA. So yes,
that would be cool.
It's been so I've been over there this week. Flew back Saturday morning. And so yesterday, most of the day was spent very jet lagged, sort of trying to get back into things. So
your dedication shone through because there were some comments and you've responded. So should we should we touch on those?
Let's do it. Yes.
So there was some mention after our last podcast when we were talking about the 20 miles per hour limit. Some references to the fact that people, youngsters, are whizzing through the town at stupid miles an hour and causing havoc, and and possibly what's the point in doing the 20 miles an hour because nobody would listen to it anyway, as in youngsters, I think is what they're referring to.
Yeah.
What is your view on that, on the antisocial behaviour side of the impact of the 20 miles an hour? Is it related? Just talk us through all of that.
Yeah, so it was interesting actually because there was a few comments that sort of came up from the whole conversation around sort of road and pedestrian safety, the whole 20 mile an hour conversation. And actually it's part of sort of tackling the problem for me because they do kind of overlap. Um, because not all sort of normal speeding is obviously a problem, but it's a problem in its own right. Whereas um, antisocial behavior type speeding. So examples or things I would think of that I'm sure many people would resonate with when they listen to this is the motorbikes late at night or kind of the boy racer type people that fly through the square like of an early evening and things like that. They they kind of fall into like the antisocial social behavior kind of bracket for me. And I know from the surveys that over 200 people responded to, which was mind-blowingly awesome, is that there's a real concern around crime and antisocial behavior in the ward, which is why it's one of my kind of key priorities. And it just fits really nice with me, Rach, because obviously I'm ex-old Bill, 16 years, spent 8 years in traffic, and sort of a few years in community type policing as well. So dealing with these sorts of things is very kind of natural for me.
Mm.
Um, and the first thing I'd say, which does come through from the surveys, is that part of the problem with crime and antisocial behaviour, I would suggest in Beaminster, is that it can be much more of a perception thing or how people feel about these sorts of issues. So I think the first thing that is quite important to sort of stress is that crime and antisocial behaviour in general in the ward isn't kind of running away with it. It's not a massive issue, but to individuals or certain members of the community, it feels like a big issue. So,
Right.
so I think that you know putting pressure on the local police to have more of a presence, to actually see through problems, find a resolution, deal with it is more important because if you have somebody that causes small, like a fairly small scale criminal damage or antisocial behavior in an area, and there's a police intervention, that goes through a process which results in a slap on the wrist or whatever it may be, then people will feel safer because they see something being done.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's where I have skills to make that happen because, um, our local police, I think they're great, but they are quite stretched. And I'm able to, when we've reported things, at the end of last year, I'm able to kind of just put a bit more pressure on that process because you can't pull the wool over my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of understand how it works. And actually, as a result of that, and I can't go into too much detail because it involves people under 18. There's all sorts of rules around it, but we have had results where we've had some low level antisocial behaviour in and around the town centre. People have been identified, police have knocked on doors, wrists has been slapped, and processes have gone through, and that we have certainly at a town council level, we've seen a fairly dramatic drop in those sorts of incidents.
Mm.
But speeding vehicles or vehicles being used in an antisocial way is for me kind of the bigger picture about the 20 mile an hour thing. So I think the two main points that some people made from what I would say a negative, not they're not negative, but from a negative viewpoint of the 20 mile an hour zone is that first of all, what's the point? Nobody does it. Nobody will follow it. Um, the second point being, well, kids speeding, up in the memorial playing field, skidding their cars, motorbikes on the square, revving their engines, treating the town like a racetrack and all that sort of stuff. For me, that's why something like the 20 mile an hour zone is actually really important in terms of the bigger picture of dealing with crime and antisocial behavior.
Mm.
Because I know some people may have a view that, well, what's the point changing it because there's no enforcement, people don't get stopped, people ignore it. Well, that's why I think you should do it because the answer to solving a problem isn't doing nothing, it's always doing something, right?
Yeah.
So, reducing the speed limit of the town is part of that process. So I always do 20 mile an hour through the town. So when I'm driving through the town, everybody behind me is doing 20 mile an hour, but there'll always be that one. Now, where that bigger picture then comes into play is the work that I have done and will continue to do in, putting pressure on people like the Police and Crime Commissioner, Dave Sidwick, local police in terms of, a reaction to problems. We've done some work around like CCTV, like, around the public hall, which has had some great results, and also communicating with other people or organisations around the town and having that natural link. So I have a great relationship with the secondary school, which is really useful. Obviously, the local church tends to be a bit of a target as well, and I have a great relationship with the church, Prior Bridge, in terms of that community engagement. So it's not just let's just make all the roads 20 mile an hour and that'll solve everything. It's then looking at, well, that's one thing we've put in place. How does that affect antisocial behaviour? So another example is under the Police Reform Act, very boring piece of legislation, which I used to use all the time when I was in traffic. If someone's using a vehicle in an antisocial manner, and there's certain kind of things that that are examples of that, but basically, if somebody uses a vehicle in a way that causes harassment, alarm, or distress to a other, and that a other can be anyone, then the driver or rider can be served a notice under the Police Reform Act that basically says, if you drive or ride this vehicle in the same manner again in the next 12 months, your vehicle will be seized. So that gives the police the power to then take that vehicle away. That driver or rider is then basically issued a ticket, and they have to pay costs to get that vehicle back from the pound. And if they don't recover that vehicle within a set time, different forces have different times. It's normally either 7 or 14 days. That vehicle will then either be sold on by the police if it's worth money, or they'll crush it. So that is one police power that's not readily used in our area, which I would want to put pressure on the local police and the Police and Crime Commissioner to say, look, here's some tools that you have to your disposal. Let's use it alongside 20 mile an hour limits, CCTV access, etc., etc. So that is a way. And what will happen, Rach, is with a bit of kind of engagement and communication by the local police and other bodies, like we have Stephen, our fantastic, shout out to Steve, our civil enforcement officer that works for the town council. If people like Steve, our local PCSO, those sorts of people just reach out to those kind of people they suspect to be acting in this way and just say, look, just giving you a friendly warning, we're using these powers, we're really clamping down on this sort of behaviour in Beaminster, in South Parrot, in Cheddington, etc., etc. Just be careful. We won't be seizing countless vehicles. We'll only seize one, and then the word gets out.
Yeah, I mean, that is a mega drastic move, isn't it? But as you say, in a town and area like ours, it only needs to happen once, and it would just be, it would really go round.
Yeah, and we've seen it with, again, I can't get into detail, but we've seen it with like the community fridge that we both run together. We've had a little spate of people, nicking a loaf of bread and throwing bread around and, whatever. I say whatever, but actually to some of the local residents, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
But through communicating with different agencies, CCTV that we have at the hall now, etc., etc., we've identified someone, there's been police intervention, they've gone through a process, and we have had no issues for a very long time because word gets out. And this is the same. So that's why I sort of say that, the 20 mile an hour zone and traffic calming, the 20 mile an hour zone thing is just one piece of a bigger jigsaw.
Yeah.
And that's where that reducing crime and antisocial behaviour element is a real key for me, because whilst the reality is it's quite low, the perception is that it's very high. And if you can deal with the perception and get into those small instances of crime and antisocial behaviour and make a difference using powers that exist, then like I say, we'll only have one vehicle seized and the word will get out. And that's why I think I'm the best man for the job, because I get it. You know, I literally used to do this all the time. And the real powerful thing with the Police Reform Act and the particular piece of legislation is it's relevant to the person and the vehicle. So
Yeah.
say I drive your car and I go and do donuts around the square and get stopped, and then 11 and a half months later, you're driving the same vehicle, but it's you driving it, not me spinning around the square being an idiot. The vehicle's being warned as well as the person.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's really powerful stuff.
Mm.
So that's why, you know, crime and antisocial behavior is a big deal for me. And for me personally, it's my bread and butter, really. And I
Yeah.
think that is, I think that'll be a real asset for the ward because, like I say, I get, I understand the pressures on local policing. I've got a great relationship with the PCC, as I have the local police, but they both know, i.e., PCC and the local police, they both know that I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not a
Yeah.
case of it's not a case of you know, just being that annoying, moany local councillor, and I'm not like that, but I'm, you know, I'm incredibly supportive of the work they do, but it's also just a case of saying, listen, I do know I've got an idea here. Why don't you just do this? So, you
Yeah.
know, the Police Reform Act is just one example of the sorts of things that we can look at doing, and because of my knowledge experience, can actually implement and influence and make happen. You know, another example which I'm currently working on is hopefully trying to get some funding to sort of upgrade the gate to the memorial playing field because we are aware of antisocial behaviour and other similar instances in the memorial playing field at night. Last summer, myself and two, three other volunteers spent the whole summer locking that gate every bloody night,
Mm.
and it worked.
Yeah.
But I've got a family.
Yeah.
I don't want to be up there locking the gate every night. So we can look at ways of having kind of remote locking access and stuff like that. Those small things make a big difference when you deal with things like crime and antisocial behavior. It's what they call the broken window effect. You
Mm.
have a little bit of graffiti on a wall. It's like a subconscious message to everyone else to graffiti that wall. So
Mm.
you want to get on top of those sorts of things, make examples of people or instances as quickly as possible,
Yeah.
as well as being more supportive and working outside of the box with local community groups and stuff like that. It's what I call the carrot and the carrot and the stick scenario.
Yeah.
You can't just be, you know, hitting people with a stick all the time, but you need you know, that carrot scenario as well, which I know the Police and Crime Commission is quite good at in terms of funding for community groups and stuff like that as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a long answer, but I think hopefully people might understand my rationale when I think about 20 mile an hour because I'm also thinking about antisocial behaviour, speeding vehicles. You know, we've all seen it on the square. You know, we all know who we're talking about.
Yeah. And I do think that, you know, the ward would be really lucky because of your knowledge and understanding and insight to how that can be managed. Um, you know, that's obviously going to be an asset, but equally, and we've mentioned this before, your sympathy to the people that report that is equally as important, isn't it? Because as you're
Yeah,
saying, what's bothers one may not bother another, and the fridge, the food coming out of the fridge is a classic example of um how what seemingly is a small act of vandalism or
yeah,
antisocial behavior with the kids taking the bread out and shoving it down the toilet or splattering cucumbers, I think what there wasn't there around that
yeah,
area. That is really, really important to the residents that live in that area because of the impact that can have, you know, encouraging
yeah,
other things, or, you know, other vermin or whatever it might be. And it's not nice for them to go outside their front door and there be cucumber splattered around. So your approach to that is always really sympathetic and really understanding to the individual
mm.
problems. So
And I think as well, like that's kind of a you get a breath a minute.
I've got hiccups.
You got hiccups. I well, no, and actually, that's also a good example of when I talk about the carrot and the stick scenario when you deal with crime and antisocial behavior. And what I mean by that, you know, the carrot and the stick scenario is that people have a perception that antisocial behaviour is an issue in Beaminster, and you can't ignore that. You need to understand that people, for some people, this really worries them. So for me, now I could, go to the local pub, all equally brilliant, so I'm not going to name one, but I could be walking past a group of half a dozen teenagers on the square, all loud, listening to music, whatever. It won't bother me because I've been in much more scary situations than that. But if you're, a young teenager or an older person, that could be really intimidating. So it's just about respecting that. But I also think on the flip side, when you talk about, crime and antisocial behaviors, not to fall into the trap of the stereotypes of those people all the time. So, again, using that same example, that half a dozen teenagers sat in the square listening to music being loud, 99 times out of 100, especially in this town, they are really good, honest, nice kids. So it's also about not falling into that trap of
jumping to conclusions.
Jumping to conclusions about them and doing stuff around reducing crime and antisocial behavior that promotes that sort of ability. So, people talk about there's not enough stuff for kids to do. There's always going to be that kind of issue. But if you think about some of the stuff we've done locally in the last few years, a big, really good positive example was getting the skate park built. I'm not going to take credit for that. I just happened to be the chairman at the end of that process, but that's been going on for 20 years. But if you visit the skate park, 99 times out of 100, it's clean, it's tidy. You might get a bit of litter, but generally speaking, it's looked after in a really good way. And that's not just our groundsmen, that's the kids.
Yeah, it is respected, isn't it? And also Proudbridge work really hard on
Bridget down there.
and outreach programs, don't they? And I think when they're in my experience, when I've known people that are my children's age, they're older now and they're getting on with their lives, but at the time there was some mega antisocial behavior, and I think they just ended up volunteering for Proudbridge. I can't even, I think I might have even envisaged imagine that, but I don't think so. I think that's the kind of thing that they do, is take it on. So, as you're saying, Steve and the community police, but also hardworking people like Proudbridge.
It all feeds into that.
It does all feed in.
So I think, I've been down at the skate park in the last couple of years with my kids, and there's older teenagers teaching younger teenagers how to skateboard. There's a brilliant, cracking young lad down there, Huck, who I met. He emailed me, wanted to talk to me about, how they can improve the skate park. So I've had meetings with him. He's a 15, 16-year-old lad who's competing in national championships now, who got into skateboarding because of our park. I think, that's a really good example of the carrot scenario as well, and providing that space for those young people. Now, I know there's the odd example of kids down there being noisy late at night in the summer and stuff like that, but generally speaking, that's a really good example of how, like, local town council, local ward councillor, fingers crossed, police, Bridge can all link in and actually also make the perceived suspects of some of this stuff not feel like suspects all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so, it's very important.
So that's the carrot and the stick for me.
Fabulous. Thank you.
So yeah, that's my crime and antisocial behaviour pledge.
Great. That's good to hear.
What else should we talk about, Rach?
Well, I had an exciting thing to this week. So my notice as to validity of nomination. Notice as to validity of nomination came through today. So I am officially now named as being a councillor for the next, I don't even know what I'm saying. Tell me what that means. Yeah, next term.
Let me just clarify what Rachel's trying to say.
Please.
So we've both had our notice as to validity of nomination.
Yeah.
So all your paperwork was correct, Rachel. You didn't fill anything in wrong. And I've had the same letter. So I didn't fill anything wrong in it either. So Monday by 4 o'clock, Dorset Council will then publish all of the people that have filled in their forms correctly, and that will then basically populate the candidate list for the actual elections in May. So that's what that means. You have had your paperwork that if there's 11 or less nominations for the town council, there won't be an election because there's no need to have an election. So you might be automatically in. And if there's more than 11 applications, which we won't know until tomorrow, you'll be on the ballot paper too for the town council.
And we hope there are more, don't we? We want there to be an election. It would be good.
No, I really want it to, I really want us to have an election. I think since I became chair 4 years ago, it's always been my long-term plan in all the stuff we've done at town council to increase not transparency in the sense of people feeling that they have an understanding of what council do and feeling more engaged with it. And we've done that for the last 4 years, I think, through like having our meetings online and all the fun stuff we've done and etc. And yeah, I think having lots of new people put themselves forward to become councillors will either be, validation that the current council's done it's not just me and you, there's obviously others, that have done a good job in promoting council. And if there's not enough, it means we've been rubbish. Or there's loads of people because they think we've done a rubbish job as councillors and they think they could do a better job. But either way, it'd be great to have an election.
It will. I was accosted in the supermarket the other week or the other day, actually, asking if you're going to be chair and doing the and if you are successful as ward councillor as well, obviously.
Yeah.
And do you want to just tell our listener about that?
Yeah, so I think somebody asked this question earlier in the podcast series, but I kind of dodged the answer because I wasn't 100% sure myself what I was going to do, but I'm happy to confirm that now. This might push our ratings up. So I've decided that I won't be. I'm not going to stand as or put myself forward as chairman again, which I don't think was much of a secret, to be honest. I think at town council level, town and parish council level, the chairman of those councils voted on an annual basis. So I've been very lucky to be supported by our council to be the chairman for 4 years. But I also think being the chairman of the council any longer than 4 years or a term is probably 1 year too many. So I decided quite a while ago that this would be my last year as chairman because I'm sure people are getting fed up of me to turning up to different events and talking about scarecrows and stuff like that. So I decided my time was up and it would be good to have a fresh face taking on chair. But in terms of standing as a town councillor, many ward councillors do also stand for local town councils, and that's obviously completely their prerogative. I don't know how they do it, to be honest, but they do. But I've decided not to. So if I'm not successful in May, I will have a lot of time on my hands because I've decided that I won't stand as a town councillor in this next election. I'm going to put 100% of my focus and effort on the ward councillor election. And hopefully, as ward councillor, and the main reason for it's not really about the time invested necessarily, because I think the reality is a lot of the time that I invest into the town is in voluntary work, like the community fridge, the larder, driving the bus, and all that stuff I'm still going to do because I enjoy it. And, I'm just, we have a good laugh and I enjoy doing the voluntary stuff. So, it's not necessarily that. For me, it's much more about being accountable and transparent to the town.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things I really want to do is be available to the councils and the towns going forward. So being a councillor of both councils, I think would make that awkward for people.
Yeah.
I think if I'm sat on the same table as you, Rach, it might make you feel a bit more uncomfortable asking me the difficult, serious questions that I will be accountable to the town council for. So
Yeah.
So I've decided I think the best thing for the town, if I am elected as ward councillor, is to just be the ward councillor.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. And and although we say that the town council work doesn't have to be particularly onerous, that you've got control as to how much time you put into it. It does feel like a natural step to step back from that, and hopefully fingers crossed you will get the ward councillor and you'll be
Yeah.
able to throw yourself into that. And again, that's great for the town.
Yeah, like I said, I think for me it's the best thing for the town if I'm successful is just to be, it's my attention to be a very proactive ward councillor for the town and obviously the town councils and the parishes in the rest of the ward. So I'm not going to go anywhere. I've got some pledges I want to make to the town around that. So in some ways things won't necessarily change, but I just think it's important to be fully accountable to the town, to the ward, to the parishes. I can't be part of the town council or the parish councillor. So it's the best thing for the town. And like I say, I'm not successful. I won't know what to do with myself.
It's going to be very strange, but you will be successful. Let's think positively.
Yeah. So there you go.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you for all of that. I'm off to Scotland this week.
Enjoy.
So, yeah.
I shall fly the flag and keep everything going whilst you're away.
Yeah, thank you very much. The world did still keep turning while you were in New York. So
well, nobody even knew I was there. So that's the influence I've got. Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay.
I'll catch up with you next week.
Great chatting to you again, and enjoy Scotland. Don't get too cold.
Thank you. I
Take it
won't.
easy.
Bye.
Bye for now.
So don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to get up-to-date episodes.